proud of our detectives and prosecutors for a job well done. To the jury, we thank you for your service. We are satisfied with the jury's decision and firmly believe justice was served. The statement obviously refers to the fact that this jury took more than 40 hours to reach the sentence, to reach the verdicts that they reached. Ashley?
And Alina, just quickly, when you talk about the verdict, many of those women who took the stand were believed by this all-white jury, 8 men, 4 women on that panel. And yet the conviction story is interesting. 36 counts, 18 convictions. So what does that say about the other counts where they did not choose guilty?
You know, he was convicted on 18 of those counts, as you mentioned. And the district attorney did address that yesterday following the verdict. And he basically said that doesn't mean that the jurors didn't believe those particular women. He feels that it may suggest that perhaps the prosecution didn't meet its burden of proof in those particular counts, Ashley.
All right, Alina Machado, thank you for that. I just want to draw our viewers' attention to that open mic that is sitting empty right now, but we are waiting for those victims to talk about this experience. And this is not something you always get to see or hear. It will be very telling. We're going to take you live to Oklahoma City just the moment that they take to those microphones. And in the meantime, there is a lot at stake here. It means a lot when you get a verdict like this. I want to bring in my lawyers, Joey Jackson, who's a defense attorney and HLN legal analyst, and Mel Robbins, a CNN commentator and legal analyst. First, guys, look, there's a million different questions I could ask you about procedure and what happened in this court, but I just want to get your reaction to it.
You know, I think it's a major victory in so many ways. And think about it this way. Even before the trial, Ashley, you have an officer. And you know how difficult potentially it could be to bring down an officer who's engaged in any impropriety. You have a brave woman that comes forward, who I know Mel will talk about.
She looks like a mom.
And, you know, she comes forward not knowing what will happen. Will the police investigate? Will they take it seriously? Boy, did they investigate, and boy, did they take it seriously. She comes forward in June of last year. By January, he's terminated. And, Ashley, they discover it's not only limited to her, but there are 13 people out there. So you get through that hurdle. And then you say, okay, do I really have faith in the system? Because now we have an all-white jury and we're dealing with 13 African-American women. Would this jury get it right? Can they relate, or will they disregard the claims? The jury got it right and then some. And then you go to the third real hurdle, which the prosecution had to deal with, and it's the nature of who the victims were, as you mentioned when you were in your lead into the story. These are people who had checkered pasts, who had criminal histories, who were the downtrodden and the defense.
They live in the world of prostitutes and drug addicts, etc. And they themselves said, who would believe me?
Exactly. And to think that, and, you know, as a defense attorney, certainly, you know, you exploit things like that. And that was their greatest strength, the defense. But the prosecution turned it into their greatest weakness by saying, who else would this officer exploit but people who would not be believed?
And that's where that's where the big mistake came in. So the whole case, and this is what I found to be fascinating, turned when a 57-year-old grandmother became one of his victims. And she was pulled over by him in the neighborhood where he was constantly targeting these women, but she didn't live there. He didn't realize she was a middle-class African-American woman who had no criminal record and knew what to do when somebody did something like this, which is to call the police. When she called the police, she went to the hospital next. The police met her there, and hats off to the police in Oklahoma City, because even though the allegations were against another police officer, they took them incredibly seriously, and it was within 1 month, Ashley, that they realized, oh my God, there are 6 other allegations, unsolved cases that match up almost identically to this.
Right?
There was a pattern.
Yeah.
He was targeting women in a particular neighborhood who were either using drugs or were prostitutes, and who he could hold power over by basically saying, you either do this sexual act on me or you're going to jail.
And I should be really careful to point out these patterns. It's very hard for us to report some of this material on television, but to be very clear, they were patterns like forcing women into the back of a cruiser to perform oral sex on them, following them to their homes on the guise that this is me protecting you, and then entering those homes and raping them in their own homes. Even a 17-year-old girl, he said, I'll help you get home safely, and ultimately raped her at that home where she, I mean, it's just, every level of it is so extraordinary. We're going to take you to the live news conference just as soon as we can. To the two of you, thank you for your insight on that, especially the all-white jury issue. I think it does speak volumes. There was a lot of concern going into this case with an all-white jury that these women wouldn't get justice, and the women who are about to take to those microphones are going to tell you what kind of justice they
And a jury recommendation, all white or not, 263 years. What does it say about how they felt what his conduct was all about?
Yeah, speaks volumes. All right, so hold it there for a moment, and we're going to come back to that live microphone.